In this super special, the Babysitters Club goes all across America.
Did they visit our state?
No, they skip over us.
Figures.
Argofunk Book Review, Argofunk Book Review.
This book was written by Peter Larangis. The premise of the book is kind of dumb. Dawn's father has to drive an RV from New York to California. Kristy's stepfather gets his own RV and brags he's taking more people to California. Before you know it, the 3-person trip becomes a 15-person trip. Watson, calm down, dude. It's not a competition. The way they split up the group doesn't make sense. 4 of Kristy's family members aren't coming, because these books never let Charlie and Sam do anything interesting when Karen's around. So, one RV has Watson, Kristy's mom, Kristy's 3 younger siblings, and 3 babysitters. Guess which ones? If you guessed Kristy, you guessed wrong. Kristy does not go on vacation with her 5 family members. Instead, the Brewers go with Jessi and Mallory, who they barely know. They also pick Abby, which makes sense because Abby's their neighbor. They're familiar with her. I wonder why Abby's sister Anna wasn't invited. Kristy, Abby, and Anna should have been the 3 people going along with Kristy's family. That would have made far more sense than turning this into an RV competition with strange rules. The destinations are also poorly planned. They're going from South Dakota to San Francisco, which looks like this. Jeff wants to go mountain climbing somewhere. There's plenty of mountain climbing places along the route, but they decide on Yellowstone, which is 2 hours out of the way and doesn't have mountain climbing. So now the route looks like this. But then Stacey decides she wants to visit her New York boyfriend in Seattle, even though he's a New York boyfriend and she can see him in New York anytime she wants. So now the route looks like this. Only they take another 2-hour detour to go through Boise, because Dawn thinks she might want to do something there. So that's 15 extra hours of driving, just so Stacey can flirt with some dude she barely knows. As for the other RV, it mostly visits fictional places, so I don't know how direct their route is. The first stop is Jessi's relatives in New Jersey. Mallory is awkward around them. Jessi starts to worry that Mallory is secretly racist. That's not true. Mallory is awkward and nervous all the time. I thought Jessi knew that. Stacey narrates as they go to Cleveland. She hates it there, because she hates pretty much anywhere that's not New York. Since Stacey is mad, she doesn't describe the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame at all. And she only describes the baseball stadium in the most basic of terms. I could be wrong, but it feels like the author was trying to hide the fact that they've never been to Cleveland. Mallory visits Chincoteague, where her favorite horse book takes place. She's disappointed to learn it has become a tourist attraction. It takes a while, but eventually she sees horses running around. It is so magical. This will clearly be the best moment of Mallory's life. Mallory also meets a know-it-all girl named Liz. Claudia is bored by the Midwest. She decides to write in her vacation journal. By mistake, she picks up Stacey's journal, which says they just visited Detroit. Stacey gets mad because they shouldn't have skipped over Detroit. That could have been a good chapter in this book. Stacey gets mad at Claudia for reading the vacation journal. Even though the girls are all sharing their vacation journals, that's the premise of the book. That's why they have those journals. I don't understand why Stacey is so mad at Claudia for doing exactly what they planned to do. Abby is a big Elvis fan, so they visit his house in Graceland. Abby likes to pretend Elvis is still alive. She and the little kids are shocked when they see Elvis walking around. They secretly follow Elvis to his motel, which is a super creepy thing to do. It turns out he's one of 3 men that are in an Elvis impersonation contest. Marianne's grandmother meets them at the Mall of America, another location that is described vaguely. Marianne is unhappy because she doesn't like going to malls, even though she's done at least a half dozen shopping trips in this series. Continuity. Marianne is upset because Dawn's dad keeps making mean-spirited jokes about the East Coast and Marianne's dad. Sounds like Jack is a little insecure about Richard's spear, and why not? Richard is the far superior husband. Marianne stands up for her dad in her next chapter, which is 12 chapters from now, almost at the end of the book. It's typical of Marianne to put off a confrontation until the last minute. Jessi visits a fictional plantation in Mississippi where her ancestors were slaves. She learns about the horrors of slavery, and she can't believe how bad it was. She's sad to learn there's no information about her relatives, and she'll probably never know who they were. Dawn and Claudia narrate when their RV runs out of gas in the Badlands of South Dakota. Dad leaves them to get more gas. He's gone for hours, and they're terrified they'll be eaten by coyotes. Dad comes back with the police. They're escorted to the Wall Drug Store because of course the police take them to the closest tourist destination. Claudia buys an old painting in the style of Georgia O'Keeffe. She's shocked when she later learns it's authentic. The other RV gets a 2-chapter story. Abby and Jessi narrate when they visit Watson's college buddy in Oklahoma. There's a tornado warning, and they all hide in the bathroom while the tornado causes mild property damage. Then they go to a rodeo. The first event is calf roping. Everyone thinks that's cruel, so they get up and leave. Jeff narrates in Yellowstone, where a bear shows up at their campsite. He goes mountain climbing and conquers his fear, having a good time. Watson notices they're near the Zuni Reservation in New Mexico. Dawn did a big fundraiser for them in Book 44. In a rather selfish move, the group barges into the private Zuni property in order to check out a plaque that was made in their honor. Karen gets mad because her school wasn't part of the fundraiser, and obviously she wants her own plaque. Karen's kind of a jerk. The school's principal comforts Karen by saying all children are precious. Dawn is upset because she wanted to visit a ghost town, but they haven't found any along their route. That's a lie. They've passed dozens of ghost towns, especially if you're willing to go 2 hours out of your way to go somewhere. Dawn takes them to Buzzard Gulch, which she thinks is abandoned. It ends up being a corny theme park based on the Old West, complete with people pretending to be cowboys. Dawn is embarrassed until she sees her friends are having a lot of fun. Karen wants to go to Four Corners so she can be in 4 states at the same time. She and David Michael get into a stupid argument over it. Dad says they don't have enough time to go to Four Corners, but he gives in once she starts crying. Stacey has trouble. She's supposed to meet Ethan in the coffee shop by the park. She didn't bother to ask which park, because she is so dumb she thinks Seattle only has one park. So Stacey rushes around the city in a panic, going to every coffee place whose name is similar to the one she's looking for. And by the way, traffic in Seattle is not that good, especially if you're driving an RV that's giant. Eventually, she finds Ethan. It turns out he had to reschedule the date for a couple hours later. He told Stacey's parents, but she didn't get the message in time. This entire problem wouldn't have happened if any of these people had cell phones. Stacey and Ethan have a fun time talking about the trip, and they kiss on the Space Needle. It's so romantic. Stacey ends her fight with Claudia so they can gossip about it. There's a serious chapter at the Grand Canyon. Abby's father planned to take the family there shortly before he died. She hates confronting her sad memories, but she also has good memories of her father. She decides she's glad she came. Kristy goes to a baseball game in San Francisco. She sees her father on the big screen and searches the stadium until she finds him. They have a brief, awkward conversation where he shows little interest in her or her brothers. Kristy doesn't want to cry in front of her dad, so she runs away before he can introduce her to his new girlfriend. Poor Kristy. At the San Diego Zoo, Andrew throws a fit when he thinks the pandas are gone. The group runs into Liz again. She gives a lot of animal facts, and everyone's super mean to her. They make many jokes at her expense. The babysitters are later surprised to learn Liz doesn't like them. Liz thinks they're boring and don't know anything. Whoa! Clearly she's got it backwards. She's the terrible one, not them. They make fun of strangers. That's totally nice and normal. The trip comes to an end at Dawn's California home. They have a party with her California friends, including Jill, which is kind of sad because Jill is going to get kicked out of the group once the California Diary series starts. There is absolutely no mention of how everyone got back to Connecticut. I'm guessing they flew, but then what happened to Watson's RV? The end. Post-book follow-up. I'm surprised at how much I disliked this book. The author is usually hilarious, but this book only has a handful of jokes. I'm sure I would have loved it if the entire thing was a crazy comedy, called It's a Mad, 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 Mad Babysitter's Club. I thought this super special was worse than most. Since every chapter takes place in a different state, it's impossible for there to be any ongoing storylines. It's just a series of unrelated one-chapter episodes. There was some attempt to have two-chapter storylines, like the Stacey-Claudia fight. The stories that are one chapter apart work just fine. The others don't, because there's too large of a gap between the two chapters. Liz is the best example. I forgot who she was, because there's 150 pages in between her two appearances. Stacey's two chapters are 4 and 18, which is also a big gap, but not as bad as Kristy, who narrates chapters 2 and 22. That's a 20-chapter gap between her two appearances. And poor Claudia doesn't do anything in the second half of the book. Each character got to pick one place to visit. Kristy picked as many baseball stadiums as possible. That's not one place, Kristy. That's lots of them. You're a cheater. I didn't care about the stories with Dawn, Stacey, Claudia, or Marianne. Kristy and Mallory's stories were fine. Jeff is usually a fun character, but he wasn't good in this book. He and the other 3 kids didn't do much. The book would probably be improved if they were removed from the story entirely, or if Jeff and Karen's chapters were given to Kristy and Stacey, because as I explained, those 2 need more chapters. Jessi's chapters on racism were good. I like them. Her other 2 chapters are the zoo and the tornado. Those could have been narrated by anyone. There's no reason to give them to Jessi. I didn't like Abby in Graceland. That story went nowhere. The chapter about her father was good, although I thought it was too similar to the storyline in Abby's biography, which is also about her coming to grips with her father's death. That's twice she's had to deal with this topic. Hopefully this means that, in the future, she'll be able to talk to her supportive friends and family about it. Overall, I didn't like the book, although it is in line with the other super specials. I want the super specials to have big, important stories. This one doesn't. It's random moments from a car trip that don't add up to anything. It's okay as a travelogue, although I suspect the author hasn't been to half of the locations in this book. Even the Jessi and Abby storylines, which I liked, get marked down in my book because those girls also narrated unrelated chapters I didn't like. I give Babysitter's Club Super Special number 14, BSC and the USA, a 1 out of 10.